Hello, my name's PG, and these are my puppet pals. As you can see, I've been having a lovely time creating these puppets over the last little while. The reason why I do it is I have found the benefit of teaching children with puppets. Do you know that puppets can say and do things that people cannot say and do, and they can do it inoffensively? I find them such a tremendous teaching tool for children. And what I'd like to do today is show you how to construct a puppet in a very simple way, in a very inexpensive way. I know when you look around at my puppets here, you would think there is a lot of money invested in them, but there really isn't, because I've found very economical ways to have this material and use it and produce it in an efficient manner. Now, I have this one puppet here.
Hello, PJ.
And I have asked him, he's a brain, and he's just a very simple puppet, and I've asked him to help me teach you a little bit about puppetry. Now, do you know what you're volunteering for, Brain?
Well, I don't know too much about it, and I don't even know why you picked me.
I picked you because you don't have any hands, hair, ears, nose, and it would be very easy to turn you inside out.
What?
Yes, I'm going to turn you inside out and show the people exactly how you've been constructed.
Will it hurt me?
No, it's not going to hurt you at all, I promise. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to go over to my work table. Now, I must tell you, my work table is really my front room, and my husband is a very giving fellow. In fact, he's the videographer today. He allows me to mess up my front room for weeks at a time while I create a multitude of puppets, and then I give them away usually, or on some occasions I'll sell them, but I usually use them to do seminars, and then I'll donate them at the time to the church that I do the seminar. Well, it's very nice of you to volunteer to do this for me, and are you sure you don't mind being turned inside out?
Well, I don't mind, as long as you promise me it won't hurt.
It won't hurt.
Will you turn me right back side out?
You mean back side out? Right side out? How does it go again?
Right side out.
Okay, I will turn you right side out again. The only thing is I may have to use a little bit more glue to get you back together.
But you promise you'll put me back together.
Yes, I promise. Okay, let's get up and go over to the workshop, and we'll begin to do the puppet instruction.
All right.
Well, we're in the workshop right now, and I'm going to show you exactly what the brain is made of. Oh, what is the matter with you? I'm scared. You don't have to be afraid. I told you it's not going to hurt. Are you sure? Yes, I promise. Okay, we have a willing volunteer here right now, and he's going to let me take his stomach out, and I'm going to show you what it is. Okay, here goes. This is what his stomach is. It's just a piece of foam turned around, and it's made room for my hand to go up into his head. Okay? I must tell you before I start that you should receive a pattern with this videotape. If you don't have it, you need it. So make sure you get it. And also, why don't you watch the videotape in its entirety before you begin anything, and you'll pick up an enormous number of hints, I promise. Now, we're going to turn this little guy, who's my brain, inside out, and we'll show you exactly what he looks like on me. Now, unlike human beings, you can squish him and push him and pull him, and he will not squeak. He's being so good for me.
Oh, I can't talk it.
No, you're not supposed to keep talking. There. This is exactly what he looks like from the inside. Don't worry, I'll make it clearer than that for you. Okay, I'll put him aside, and we'll go on to the exact parts you'll have to use in order to make this puppet the way it is. I ask you to do is make sure you wear clothing that is not good. As you've noticed, I put on my work pants, And any surface that you're working on should be covered well. As you can see, I have a very well used, large, thick piece of vinyl here. I use it for things other than puppet making, but there are times where you're going to cut through an object when you're cutting, or you're going to maybe spill a little bit of glue, and you want to make sure your surface is protected. If you're doing it on your front room carpets, it's a good idea to have newspaper or some drop cloths around your table to protect the things. If it's a glass top table, it still needs to be covered. My glass top table now has many little scratches in it from pins. So you don't want to have that on your glass top table, do you? Or on your Goodwood table. Pattern that you will be receiving with this video. And as you can see, mine's pretty old. This was my first one. After I made this puppet pattern, I graduated to using a Pellon one. This is just a thick interfacing that's a little more decorative than you normally see for you sewers. And then I graduated from that one and I made myself a cardboard one, because I found that during mass production, certainly this one won't hold up. This one will soon wear out, but this one will last a lot longer, except it's even wearing out now because I have made hundreds, probably in the thousands of puppets already. These are some of the items you will need. Now this is your basic puppet head. It is constructed from these two parts. Two of these are cut and one of this is cut. This is this, and this here is this. This piece here will be used at a later time in a second gluing sequence. Actually, the puppet requires 2 gluing sequences to construct it. It's made out of foam like this, or foam like this, or foam like this. It depends on what is available. I have decided that I would not use standard construction materials. I'm really into recycling, and I find many of my materials at garage sales or thrift shops. In fact, I don't think I've ever paid full price for any pieces of foam that I've purchased. Now, if you're in a smaller area, you may have to order in foam from foam suppliers, but you can find it under foam in the phone book or on the internet, so you shouldn't have a problem getting it shipped in. This is the largest I would use, which is 1 inch. I usually use 3/4 inches or to 1/2 inch, 3/4 to 1/2 inch. This, as you know, or you probably will recognize, is part of mattress cover. It's thick like this. The reason why I've constructed it like this is often I will make skin fitting brains, and I like the bumps to show. It makes it more like a brain-like object when I do it. Now you saw a smooth top brain that I had dismantled. What we do is we lay out our cardboard templates, which you will make from your pattern. Don't destroy your pattern, keep it in just in case you lose a cardboard template that you make from it. You'll lay it out in the best, most conservative way possible so that you conserve most of your foam. And what you need again is 2 of these. You'll need 1 of these, 1 of these, and 1 of these. This is the body I showed you. It has been turned like this and glued, and then I've cut the little square oval shape here just for my own hand, and you can determine what size you need. It goes down about this far. I don't think I even have it on the pattern because each person's hand is a different thickness, and it's whatever you're comfortable with. Or if you're making them for someone else, you just kind of pick the medium thing, a medium kind of wrist that anyone would have. Now, I lay them out, and I will trace around each piece and get as many pieces as I can on this piece of foam. Then I will cut them out. Okay, now I have a little secret for you to help you in your puppet production. When you have guests come to visit you, you can utilize their skills when they get bored. This is my father-in-law who came to visit us for 3 weeks over the Christmas holidays, and he was bored. And so what he did, was he traced my templates so that he had enough for the innards of 40 puppets. Then he sat there and he painstakingly for 2 days cut out all of these pieces of foam along with all the rest that I'm not showing you. There's a mountain about this high of foam, and it's all due to him. So needless to say, this production was really speeded up because of my automation here. And you too can have automation. Even older children that are able to cut a straight line can do that. And while I'm at it, I should tell you, when you're cutting these, make sure you cut straight up and down, because these are going to be glued together like this. And if you have them on an angle, you won't get the proper circle with them when you glue them together. Okay, we'll begin to construct the form of the puppet. Remember, I turned the brain inside out and showed you. This is part of the head unit. And if you remember, I showed you the 3 templates that make the foam part of the head. These are the actual shell of the head themselves. That's this part here and this part here. And underneath this is the smaller one, not the medium-sized one, the smaller one. It will go in there. So there are actually 3 kinds of glue that you can use. White glue will not work. Craft glue will not work. You have to have contact cement. Now this one is the one I use the most because it seems to stretch the furthest. It's very liquid. It's not a stringy type of cement like the normal the first kind of contact cement they came out with. It was very stringy. It smelled quite strong, but it did dry quicker than this. Okay, it dried in about 4 hours, whereas this one I find takes sometimes overnight, like 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours to dry, depending on how moist the air is. And as in any normal contact cement, you would spread it on both surfaces to be glued. Then you have to wait until it dries. Then you put it together. Once you put it together, it does not come apart again. So you have to put it together accurately. With this white kind of glue, you have a little more play with that. If you do get it off center, I find that you are able to get it apart a little more easily. This is called 3M Super 77 adhesive glue. This is very expensive. This can is, I think it was $19, whereas this is $7, $8 in that size. And if you're not doing as many puppets as this comes in sizes that are 1/4 this. So you wouldn't have to pay that much. You could only pay $3 to do a whole set of puppets, like 70 puppets. I think this would do maybe 75 puppets. This glue, 75 to 100 puppets. This, I probably wouldn't do 35, and like I said, this is a lot more money. The advantage to using this is that it's very, very quick. This is the only spray product I know that will actually hold foam. And this is the only liquid product I know that will hold foam. Okay, you would begin by spreading this surface with the glue. In this case, it will go on a milky color. When it becomes clear, it is dry. If you try to construct it while it's still wet, it will eventually pull apart, even if it does stick at the beginning. You have to wait until it's dry. You have a 24-hour period before it dries too much. If you want to reactivate it, if it did dry too much, you can just spread another layer on it and we will reactivate. Okay, you would spread this edge here on this one and on your other one, the same edge. Set them down to dry. I also want to spread approximately 3/4 inch wide strip right along here as well, because when these head pieces are together, it will form to make this, and in here you're going to put this piece right inside there, and that's the piece you'd already spread some on as well. Warned me that I didn't face the camera with this when I was doing it. You have glued around the edges on these two pieces, and you've got them together and they look like this. Then what you're going to do is insert this one, which has also been glued around this edge, inside like this, and again pinch it, and then that's what makes this. Now, because this will take 12 hours to dry, Once I have these glued, but before they're constructed, I go over to my machine and I begin to construct the outward shell of the puppet. So that's what I'm going to do next, so that you'll know what sequence to do these things in. Before you actually begin constructing the puppet, you'll have to make a piece that will fit into the mouth, because you can't apply that head section that I made until the mouth is in the shell of the puppet. There are templates for this piece here. This is one side of the mouth. This is the other side of the mouth. That's what holds your mouth firm, rather than having a mouth that would become disformed when you use your hands inside it. These mouthpieces, it's important to mark the center front and center back on each one of these. This is shown on your template, on your pattern piece, okay? And you can't see it right now, but it's a little blue line that's sitting right here. These two pieces are laid on the table like this, 1/4 inch apart, depending on the thickness of your felt. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about the felt that you would use for the mouth. This is the kind of felt you would in your discount fabric stores. It's a very thin piece of felt. It's not the best, it's not even wool felt, but it's very adequate. So, and again, you can find these things at garage sales. I've made my own felt. I've purchased an old coat from the Sally Ann, an old wool coat, and I've washed it in hot water and dried it in the dryer, and as a result of that, it has melded into a piece of felt, because that's all felt is, it's just shrunken wool. And I've cut out many pieces of felt that way. I've also used velvet and woven fabrics, but they are not as good or as durable as felt. Now when I said, depending on how thick your felt is, you will spread this apart, I'll show you why. When you take the felt eventually to put on these two pieces, if you have them 1/4 inch apart, which is for using this thin felt, it will be fine. But if you get a thick felt in there, what happens is it will get between the two pieces and it will be almost impossible to close the mouth section later on when you turn the puppet inside out. So I'll just continue to construct the mouth. What you do is you take the mouth like this, you lay it down, and I don't know if my videographer can see this. Can you see this on the table? We take a piece of duct tape. This is the very best. Whoops, I don't want to use my good scissors on duct tape. This is the very best thing to use. It's the most durable piece to use. Whoops. And I like to put the duct tape down on the table and put the pieces on top of it. And if you'll notice, by the way, that these templates, you have to, it's fiddly stuff. There. Okay, if you'll notice, these templates are marked on both sides with the little mark, because you will be referring to both sides of this. Okay, here we go. I set the template on like this, and then 1/4 inch apart, because I'm using the very small felt. I set it like this. Then what I do is I will take my felt and cut it out. I will lay this template onto the piece of felt to cut out. The reason for that is, of course, if I just cut out one with these together, it's going to be too small. So you see, this will fit exactly this piece. If there are any pieces of your tape left over, cut them off. Now I had showed you, these are your cardboard templates that I had made from the original pattern. What these are the outward shell of the puppet that gives it the shape when it goes over top of the foam. There are all kinds of material you can use to make puppets. I found this at a garage sale, and it is actually puppet making material. By the way, when you're creating the outward shell, you're going to cut 2 of this, which turns into each side of the puppet, and you're going to cut 4 of this because you'll need 2 for each hand. And of course there are 2 hands. And just as a reminder, when you're constructing these puppets and you sew these hands on, make sure your thumbs are facing your body. And if you can't remember which way they face, just look at your own hands. You don't this with your hand out like that. Your hand hangs down like this. Well, that's the way the puppet's hand should stand. Otherwise, they're going to look really funny if they're standing out the other way with their thumbs out the other way. Okay, that is one type of material. This is often in commercial puppets, and I did find this at a garage sale. I did not purchase this like through commercial outlet. I find that the most professional white puppet is made out of a material that blankets are made out of. It's actually a knit fabric that's bonded to a small piece of foam. And I'm sure you've seen this in blankets. I have a blanket made out of it. And so, again, at garage sales, you can find older blankets that are still in really good condition or maybe have one spot, or that can be washed. And, of course, you'd wash your things. I meant to mention that if you do get secondhand things, you give it a good smell first to make sure that it hasn't been used for anything wrong. And then you give it a good washing to make sure, you know, you're not bringing contaminants into your home. But anyways, I made these ones out of a blanket that I found. This also is blanket material. Okay, and you can see it's just a thicker one, which I will be making. I find that to be politically correct, I will use every kind, a color of material that I can get. I have greens, I've just finished with some yellows, and there's blues. Then you know you're always okay no matter what country you might send these puppets to. A lot of people have preferred the white ones or the brown ones or black, and you can get these blankets in any color really, so it doesn't matter. But I kind of like the idea of getting less ethnic and more generic, and then that's when you don't see a green person, you don't see a blue person, okay? So that's why I tend to stick to those colors. This fabric that I have used, what it is, ladies' two-way stretch undergarment fabric. The only reason why I've used it is I got a tremendous sale on it. They came in 1.5 meter pieces, and I think they were $1 a piece, and I just found them in a discount warehouse somewhere. And so, like I said, I've made a lot out of these as well. The only thing is that they do tend to, because they have a two-way stretch, they do tend to stretch out if you get hold of them too hard. Their body will elongate, although it does retract. It's just not as, but you don't work with it quite as well. Another thing that I've used is sweater knits. Old sweaters from garage sales or the Salvation Army again, especially when I get into the red materials, because I find a very difficult time finding this in red, in a good red. And when I make the devil and the heart, I have to have red material. So I have used that. I've used stretch wool that was from an old pantsuit of mine. My brain's made out of a bathrobe, if you'll notice. Now, when you're making your characters, use your imagination as to the type of material you're going to use. For example, that velour, stretch velour brain that I used. Here, let me show you again. You could see how that was a bathrobe. But a brain would kind of look like this. It would have lines. Or we would use the bumpy heads like this. And I've even used a white material and stretched a nylon stocking over top to make it look bumpy. Or else I'll draw little brain patterns onto a white fabric like this and make it into a brain. So, you know, you have to use your imagination if you want to have a really good variety of puppets. However, now I want to talk to you about sweater knits. When you make a heart out of a sweater knit, you have to make a point, and I find that that does not hold well. Unless you reinforce the light sweater knits that are not a high thread count, they don't work as well. But you don't use the heart puppet as much as you use the others, at least when you use my curriculum. You don't. It only appears in a few of the puppet shows. So I find that they last just as long as the other puppets. But I would hesitate to use those kind of materials. Again, what I said is the best is the blanket style material, or this if you can find it. And apparently this is used in the construction of backboards for displays. And what this is a roll off of the material left over from constructing them. I actually asked, and there is some, if you ask around, there may be a garment place in your city or town that uses this, you know, a mill that uses this type of material. So keep your eye open and always be looking, and the more puppets that you make, the more you realize what types of material you can use. But I did want to warn you against the thin knits. They really don't work well. They don't last well. They might look good in the very beginning, but they do wear out very quickly, hammer or not. But I've taken a felt pen and I have traced around the templates onto the back of this so that I can mass produce this as well as when in the same manner that my father-in-law mass produced my phone for me. Okay, and then I just cut them all out when I'm watching television or doing something that doesn't require much concentration, like listening to my husband's tape sometimes. No, we'll just delete that. Okay, when we have them cut out, these are the two parts that you will do, and you'll do them right sides together. And this is the actual body itself. Now, you'll have to, in the beginning, you'll have to pin. Depends on whether you use a serger or a sewing machine. I find that a sewing machine has more accuracy in this. When I used that light material like this, I had to use a serger because it would rip. It was so stretchy. But I find a sewing machine with using the presser foot edge of 1 inch, and that's what the seam allowance is on these. Is not 1 inch, 1/4 inch. Seam allowance is 1/4 inch on these. So if you just use the width of the presser foot, usually on most machines, it'll be an accurate guide for you. And you'll have to pin in the beginning. But after a while, you won't even have to pin as you become more adept at making these puppets. This is an essential item when you're working in your home. It's to protect your husband's feet. It's a metal pin picker-upper. Because when you start manufacturing these things in your home and you have a carpet on the floor, these pins fall all over the place. And you'll be hearing, ouch, 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 how can you do that to me? Constantly. Now for some reason, I never step on those pins, but if there is a pin on the floor, my husband will. So what I do is I just use this, or sometimes I tie it if I know there's going to be a lot of pins around, I tie it to a broom. So what we'll do is, in order to construct this, this is the mouth, and this is the head. In the head, there is a dart. So, I'd pin the dart like this. I'd put a couple of pins in. Then I'd go over to the machine, sewing machine, and I'd sew 1/4 inch in and tie off the end so that it stays solid. Don't just do a few repeat stitches. Don't do back and forth because you don't get your point. Like anyone who's a seamstress here would know, you never do back and forth to start your, to end your darts. You would run a few off the edge, or else you would tie it off. And once that's sewn, I would sew both darts first. Then I would sew 1/4 inch again, seam allowance, all around here and all around here. Now what I'm going to do is go over to the sewing machine just to make sure you know what I'm talking about, and just run these up. When you start your dart, don't start it right at the beginning here because it's difficult for the machine to get up and over this. And by the way, I'm using a size 14 needle. You start a bit in, and then you'll, and I'm also using between a 2 and a 3 stitch length, which would be, 10 stitches to 12 stitches to the inch, okay? So you start reversing first. Then come forward, and that ties your knot, okay? Notice that I'm keeping it exactly 1/4 inch all the way down to the end. Now watch. Take it off the end, like this. And then what you'll do is you'll just tie off the end here. That's the dart. Be very careful that you do not sew the mouth together. The small one is the dart. Completed both side off the ends, and I'm now going to put the right sides together again and stitch right around the edge. I'm starting in a bit again, back space first. As you can see, I don't need to pin, but you might feel more secure if you do pin while you're doing yours. It doesn't matter which way the dart turns when you sew over it. And of course, when you do these, because they're a knit fabric, you won't have to put a hem on them at all. But make sure you make a good back stitch here, because when you're putting them on and off your hands, you want them to remain strong. Now you would sew the other side again. I like sewing from the mouth down because if the bottom is off, I can always cut that in case I'd made a mistake with the cutting and made one a little longer than another. I can always cut that off, whereas if you sew from the bottom to the top, you won't be able to cut it off. You'll throw your mouth out of kilter. Now what you're going to see is probably the most difficult part of this. But if you follow instructions, you shouldn't have any problems. You may have to have 1 or 2 tries at it. Remember the template with the duct tape on that we used to cut out this round felt? This is the piece of felt that will be inserted into the mouth. Remember I told you to mark your template? You should also mark this felt with the, you can't see it because it's done in chalk, but with the center front, center back line, side, which is 1/8 in from the, into the space where the duct tape is sitting, okay, which is your center side fronts, okay. What you do is you take your mouth, right sides together again, of course the felt is right on both sides, and you need to pin on each one of those marks. You pin the center front to the center front there, then on the, this is the bottom center front, center front to center front here, then the side front, there's a little mark there, right into here, and the side front onto the other side. Now this is where a little bit of practice comes in. It should fit, if you've been accurate in your cutting, it should fit almost exactly without any stretching or working in, but you may have to. The only thing you don't want to do is make a ripple anywhere, because it will then have a ripple in its mouth once it's made, which will not look very good unless you make it white and make it look like a canker. And by the way, you don't always have to use black felt for a mouth. In fact, the more colorful the puppets are, the better they seem to be. Sometimes it's kind of difficult to get it started in here because it's a very fiddly little space to do it. And you want to do your repeat stitches again to start it off. I don't like to run over pins with my sewing machine because it dulls my needles. Although this is a FAF and it does have a walking foot and it will supposedly run over pins. Like I said, though, it's hard on my needle. Did you stop?
No.
I have this very fiddly when you get to this part. You might want to stop and pivot on the sides of the mouth, which is exactly what I'm doing. You stop with your needle in the material, which I didn't do. I don't have an automatic stop on my machine. And you kind of fiddle with, are you shooting up close to this, Henry?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you kind of fiddle it so that you still keep your 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now it's just about impossible to keep it right on. The idea is you've got to catch enough in there that it remains caught. Now sometimes you have about 1/8 of an inch to play with anyways. Let's do this. I want to take the pin out, that's why I had to stop there. I'm just going to go a little further yet. Okay, now I'm going to stop it here and fiddle with it until it gets in here as well as you possibly can get it in. This is an important part of it, and you can't just be done
haphazardly, because I'll show you why a little later, what can happen with the mouth. It can become mismatched, and you've got the nose over where the, right above the left side of the chin or something like that. Okay, I'm just going to finish constructing this off camera, but you kind of get the idea. Just be as accurate as you can. Finish sewing this, and what I've done is trimmed off all the threads, because otherwise I'm going to glue this mouth, this part of the mouth, and it becomes a little bulky if there's a lot of threads in there. One thing to do before this is you turn your puppet inside out and make sure you have constructed your mouth properly. Now, remember I said to you that if you get any ripples in it, it will look funny once you paste. And you check around the edge to make sure there are no ripples, and you can see that I have none on this, or you probably can't, but I can see. What I mean is by an overlapped piece, because then when you glue it, it's going to be overlapped and your mouth won't be nice and smooth. This is what your puppet's actually going to look like with this constructed inside it, and so it will be flat. Okay, I'm going to use my 3M glue for this. This is the one time you can use white glue, but then again you have to wait until it dries. So I'm just going to go out my balcony and quickly spray the pieces to be glued together, and then I'll come back. Spray. Wait until it dries. So I'm just going to go out my balcony and quickly spray the pieces to be glued together, and then I'll come back. Spray both areas to be bonded, and remember, I had marked with a chalk pen the center front, center back, and the sides on this. It is important, extremely important now to match the center backs and side and center front and side on this when you put it together. Otherwise your mouth will look like this. Okay? Now, I like to lay this part down like this, as flat out as possible. Oops. And if you notice, you spray this side, not this side. This side. And you try not to get any spray on the duct tape, because it's better if the felt doesn't actually stick to the duct tape part of it. This is tricky to do this, and I notice that this is not being very obedient to me right now. It's because I've got that 3M glue, and like I said, I don't usually work with it. But you try and make it so that it's flat out. Almost flat out there. Okay? Now matching those lines that you've marked, lay this on top of this. Like this. Now what you do is you feel inside to make sure there are no ripples in this when you put it together. Now remember, this 3M bonds instantly, but the white glue won't. And so you have to hold it for just a bit when it's white glue and let it sit for a while to dry. Like I like to give them an hour. Same if you're using the contact cement. But what I did was I sprayed both of these with the 3M. I can feel that this has bonded very nicely in here, and I will leave it just a few minutes to set. While it was drying, I went over and I stitched up the hands. What I did was I stitched all around here at 1/4 inch. Then I turned them inside out so that they look like this. Then I took some stuffing and stuffed it inside. And actually there are kind of two kinds of stuffing. There's the bulky kind, and then there's this that's usually used to wrap furniture. Quite often you'll find this on old pillows, or else furnace filters when they're changed in apartment buildings. They'll have tons of them and they won't even be dirty because they're under contract. But you take them and you wash them all. You know, they'll wash in your washing machine, just on gentle cycle, and let them hang dry. And then you've got all of this, so it's all reclaimed material again. This can be taken out of pillows. Wash the pillow with soap and water beforehand, and let it dry naturally and take it out. Don't use feathers. Stuffed it inside. In order to shape the hand, you would go over to your sewing machine, lengthen your stitch, and then sew down to form the fingers, if you so desire. Children don't seem to notice the difference between a hand that looks like it's in a glove than one with fingers. If you remember, cartoon characters only have 3 fingers and a thumb, so it's made to sew down 3 into here. And you can sew a little crick in the elbow too if you want to. Okay, I turn these under and slip stitch them closed. It's not necessary, you can just close them because they're really under clothing most of the time, but when Adam and Eve comes out, you don't want them to see black thread on their arms. And Adam and Eve, you know, just wears little tiny big leaves and things like that, so they're half naked. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you exactly what you're going to glue here. And again, everything that I'm giving you is in written instruction, so you won't have to turn on this video every time to watch. But I do want to emphasize that it's important that you attach the right part to the right part in this one. Otherwise your puppet head will be upside down. Now this, which is the form you made earlier, will be glued right along here. That's the part where this part has been inset into, right along there. That will go into the section of the head that has the darts on it. When it is glued, it will be glued like this. Okay? You do not glue this part to it. That's where your fingers will eventually fit. But it is essential to glue this to this. Try not to get any glue into this area of the mouth that is mobile. With this, you will glue, remember this is the medium form now that you never used before. You will glue that, and you will put it on the bottom part, the part without the dart in the bump in the head, and you will glue it on like this. Okay, and that's where the other part of your hand will go into. Now I'm just going to go outside and glue these and bring them back and show you how. What I did, by the way, was I went out and I sprayed this part too. Make sure you don't get any glue in this area though, just around the edge, the 1 inch. Okay, it's sticking real nice now. Now what I try to do is put it about a 1/4 inch back from that, where that masking tape is in the open part between the two. Press it in like that, and same thing. Now these are all in the instructions, but sometimes it's better shown rather than read. If you notice, that's on pretty tight now. I guess this 3M is kind of a contact cement too. I didn't realize it was till now. You had to have glue on both parts. Now remember, this part here goes to the part with the dart in it. I try and fit it right on, again, about 1/8 to 1/4 inch back. There. Well, get together like that. So that's what it actually looks like on the inside, and that's when I showed you the brain, what he looked like on the inside. Now while we're letting this dry, I'll just talk about some of the embellishments on the puppets. You save your scraps. And don't be afraid to mix one type of material, like this yellow, with the green, for example. This scrap, I would just cut a circle out. This is, I'm working on the nose now. I'd cut a circle out, put right sides together, sew around it, leaving a space. When I'm saying just a circle, if you use a template for the nose, for example, every puppet's going to look the same. But if you want puppets to have different personalities, you could sew an oval, you could sew a circle, you could sew a misshapen nose as if he has a cauliflower nose. But what you'll do is you'll leave a little space open, then you'll turn the nose inside out, you'll stuff him with some stuffing, and slip stitch closed the edge that was left open when you turned it. Now this is at a time where you can do some shaping on the nose. You could slip stitch it closed in like this, so that when he's on the head he would look like this, or you could slip stitch it closed like this, so he'd have a protruding little nose. You know, it depends. You can stuff it and pull it in tight so that he's a bulbous nose. For example, you use your own judgment on what to do. But as long as you don't use a template, like I said, it's going to be different every time, and that's what you want to do, is give your puppets character. I don't bother putting on ears, mainly because if I have girls with long hair, they always get hooked up in the ears. So it's up to you. If you want to, you would do again the same thing. Just make a little bean shape. So around it, leave a slit open, turn it inside out, stuff it, slip stitch it closed. It would be a bean shape, would be like ears, and then you can sew them on. Now that I put on, and we can turn the puppet right side out, we're ready to work with them. Don't be afraid to kind of mash it down in order to do it, because there's no other way to do it unless you do it that way. You have to work it till you get it right side out. By the way, when I'm turning the hands inside out, it helps to poke a pencil inside it. And then again, when you're stuffing it, you want to poke your stuffing right down into the thumb of the hand. These puppets would wear, I think I've had them into size 4 baby clothes with a little adjustment. I buy only baby clothes, secondhand. I don't pay more than 25 cents for an outfit, and I get the most gorgeous outfits. A lot of times, even if you go into the Salvation Army, they want $1 or $1.25 for the outfits, but at the end of a season, they'll clear them out for a whole bag full for $1.25. So you get the biggest bag you can find in the store and you stuff it full. Or else garage sales again, or I find really good places, church thrift sales, because when it gets time for the closing time, they'll actually let you fill bagfuls for a certain amount of money too at those. I'm still working at this to get it right side out. It's almost there. And now you'll see what a generic puppet looks like without any embellishments at all whatsoever. And it looks like he's turning out okay. Now you see he'd come out like this, all sort of gibbled. What you want to do is work his mouth into the proper place and get your hand inside here and just pull this down so that his lips go inside properly. Oh, so it might be a little hard on your fingers, especially when you're doing 40 in a row, when you're doing an assembly style, assembly line type thing. Still got it, you've got to really work on the lower lip because it's difficult to get him right inside out, especially when your fingers are sticky from 3M glue to boot. That's why you want to make sure it's dry, because there is a little bit of tugging when you do the turning. There you go. There he is. There's our generic. I'll just pop his head out a bit. He's kind of caved in there. There's our generic puppet.
There are none so blind as those that cannot see.
Okay, the thing is, we're going to make him so that he's able to see. And something that I have used in the past are things you might get on sale or find at garage sales. Now, I don't exactly know what these are. They're sort of a rubber ball thing. And I got yellow ones, and I used it on devil's eyes because it looked really good. It's almost like a tennis ball. You cut it in half and you glue it on. I've used styrofoam egg-shaped eyes that you cut in half. I've used these bags of these eyes. But what I find is the very best, and I'm sure your church will be able to fully supply it for you at no cost whatsoever, if your pastor will nicely ask the congregation if they have any spare buttons, big buttons. What I do is I find buttons about this big, okay, and I put them on his eyes. Here's a puppet that has double eyes. Now, what I asked for was small black buttons and then any other color button that's large. And I've just put one on top of the other and sewn through the holes, right through. If you have a shank button that doesn't have holes in it, you use a glue to put them on. Make sure it's a good bonding type glue where they won't fall off. And put a number of stitches through it, because I find for some reason the thread doesn't seem to hold too well with these buttons. But foam, if you use foam eyes or any of these other things with glue, they come off after just a few times. This is the only thing that has been reliable for me is buttons. That's the eyes. The hair, you'll never guess what that's made out of. A macrame hanger from a garage sale. I could get four to five hairdos out of this. If I want a punk, I'll just take this all matted one here. Okay, then there's the other kinds. They just make wonderful puppets. I'm just going to show you another one here. This is sort of the end of one. Macrame hangers. I've used fun fur. Again, fur that I found in garage sales. I haven't bought any of, paid full price for any of this. I've used old wigs from garage sales. If they smell moldy, I put them in the washing machine with a little bit of water, a little bit of bleach, because it doesn't really matter anyways. This is my old lady puppet, and she looks old because she has gray hair and it's stringy, and not that old ladies look like that, because I'm an old lady and I don't look like that, do I? Okay. I have advanced to make other kinds of puppets. This is a snake puppet. I've actually filled him with kapok that I took out of a large bear, which I made into a full-bodied costume. I used the head and the paws and the feet, and then I had a full coverall, and I sewed the paws and the feet to it and put the head on over top of my own head, and it then became a full-bodied, like a full-bodied person, not just a puppet. And then I reclaimed the kapok that came out of the original stuffed animal. That's that hard sort of, I don't know if you can hear it, it's little balls of almost like styrofoam. And I just drew the puppet pattern mouth, again, elongated, and put a couple of eyes on it. This is old dress material that I used once to make a dress, and I have a snake. And you notice the different kind of tongue. You can give them all kinds of personalities. The devil always has a forked tongue. The snake always has a forked tongue. You have a template in your material for the normal kind of tongue. Oh, none of these puppets have their tongues in yet. I guess I forgot to put them in. This is what the template will look like. You cut it out of red felt or any other color you want. And it'll go in like that, just to give them some personality. You don't always have to use black here either for the mouth. You can use other kinds, like I like red on the devil. And I always make the devil red. The arms are slip stitched on right about here. Okay, depends on what type of puppet you want to have or how big the clothing is that you've got for it. If you've got a size 4, you might want to sew them on about here because they'll still hang out of the sleeves. But I've had a 6-month size on. So I usually aim for about a size 1, 9 months till 1. They seem to fit nicely. I'll just check to see what this is, if it's still in the back here. Yes. 30. It says, so I don't know. Maybe it's a British-made garment. It doesn't have size months on it. But see how nicely that little dress fits. You can pick all kinds of mod clothes up. It doesn't have to be designer clothing on the puppets. Look at this, it's just a cute little jacket, but it looks almost designer. And the reason why is because I matched his hair to the color on the jacket, so he looks really good. That's a little tip. If you match the hair color to the clothing, it looks a lot nicer with the puppet. And try and buy vivid clothing like this, vivid colors, unless of course she's an old lady or an old man and they kind of wear gray. Or white sweater. This is sort of an old-fashioned sweater for a puppet to wear, so that's why she's an old lady. Also, these are the kind of, you'll often find these kind of things at garage sales too, little hair pieces. They're the ideal size to put on a puppet, you know, rather than a regular size wig. Wouldn't that make a cute grandmother puppet with just that on, or a grandfather puppet? You can give your puppets personality as well by putting a little head on them sideways. You know, doesn't that just really dress up your puppet? Also, if you have period puppets, you can most likely have to buy this. I've not seen this in garage sales, but on sale it's $8.98 a meter, and you could get 50 beards out of it. Okay, out of a meter. I think I've gotten 25 out of this, and it's only a 1/4 meter. And what it is, it's just long hair. You cut with the nap going down, and you just shape a beard out of it. Cut it out, and what you do is you sew a piece of elastic here on the corner of the beard and here on the corner of the beard. It goes like this, and it fits around your own head, or you can make it to fit around a puppet's head. Or you can sew them right onto the puppets, whatever you to do. Make mustaches and things like that. And the placement of the eyes and the nose on the puppet itself will determine what the puppet looks like as well. For the devil puppets, I like to use buttons that are brass or have little zigzags in them or something, so it kind of looks mean, and I put the eyes close together, and I'll put on eyebrows out of fake fur going down like this on it to make them look mean. The rest of the puppets, I just place the eyes wherever I want to. You can actually see by the placement of the eyes the difference it will be. I'll find some eyes here that are something that will show up against this. Okay, if you were to put the eye there, these aren't matching, but if you were to put the eyes like this, you see how they look. But if you stuck the eyes way up here, you'd have a completely different look. The same for the nose. Okay, where you stick this nose and how you shape him when you pull him on. You put him on like this, he looks like that. You stick him on like that, he looks like that. You know, it changes his personality completely, sticking him out like that. Same for the ears. So, you know, use your imagination when you put it together that way. What I've done is I've used a contrasting thread color when I sewed on the machine to help you see what I was doing. But you should try and match your thread, because when it's pulled apart, it will show as it's stretched, you know, slightly. Especially on the thinner materials, if you do get into using knits, you will have to match your color completely. Tongues in like I did. And once he has his arms on, with the thumb facing in, and his eyes and everything, he looks pretty good. All you have to do is dress him in the clothes you found. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I've enjoyed making it. I don't know if my husband's enjoyed videoing it, though. He looks pretty tired to me. Bye-bye.